Housing advocates are warning that millions of Americans could soon lose their homes in the wake of the CDC's eviction moratorium expiration this past weekend. The CDC froze evictions in September to help protect people who were behind on rent during the pandemic. Last week, the White House said it was up to Congress to renew the ban, citing June's Supreme Court ruling. But House lawmakers adjourned Friday's session without a deal. They're now on a 7-week summer recess. As many as 11 million people in the U.S. are currently behind on rent, according to data from the Center on Budget and Policy. The hardest hit region is the Southeast, with close to 30% of renters in Mississippi and South Carolina behind last month. Missouri Congresswoman Cori Bush is among a group of progressive Democrats protesting the lapse by sleeping on the U.S. Capitol steps. Representative Bush experienced homelessness herself before she became a lawmaker. Here's how she framed her push for action.
In the midst of a global deadly pandemic, how do we force people out of their homes and put them in situations where we know that that can be deadly? The lawmakers in this country, we have to act. So we have asked for the White House and the CDC to work together, and we need an eviction moratorium. We've asked for House leadership to reconvene the House. Bring us back. Bring us back. We need to know that we have the 218 votes. Let's get this done. And the thing is, these things can happen simultaneously. We need the bill. We need an actual bill, the bill that is on the table that Chairwoman Maxine Waters has introduced, that would be an eviction moratorium through December 31st. We need to at least start there. I want to see that strengthened. I want to see a moratorium through the end of the pandemic, but we at least need to start with the bill that we have.
CBS MoneyWatch reporter Irina Ivanova has been covering the impact of the now expired eviction moratorium. Welcome to you, Irina. So beyond renters, how many people stand to be impacted by the expiration of these benefits?
Thank you, Elaine. We know we have about 11 million people who are behind on rent, but as you note, there are people losing all kinds of social safety net benefits as enhanced unemployment and other benefits expire. So already approximately 7 million people have lost unemployment benefits because they live in states that have cut them off early. We have millions more who will be losing unemployment benefits as of early September, so just about a month from now. Now, if we look just at the rent issue, the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities has looked at where geographically renters are most behind. And we see that the states that are most vulnerable are in the Sun Belt, in the Southeast and Southwest. So in Mississippi, we have 29% of renters who said they were behind on rent as of last month. South Carolina, it's 28%. In Georgia, it's 24%. So more than 1 in 4 rental households in all of these states. And then other southern states, it's about 1 in 6 renter households. Of course, the question of who is most threatened doesn't just depend on who's most behind, but it depends on the laws in the state you live in. I spoke with the National Housing Law Project last week. They explained that a lot of these states and cities, and not just in the South, have allowed eviction filings to proceed while the moratorium has been in place. Of course, the only thing the moratorium prevented was the physical removal of renters, not the legal process to get there. And so according to the Eviction Lab, the cities with the most eviction filings to date have been Phoenix, Houston, Las Vegas, and Tampa. And then the states of Indiana and Missouri, which is, of course, the home state of Congresswoman Bush, have each more than 80,000 eviction filings in the pipeline right now.
Well, in terms of a safety net, what benefits exist for people who are facing eviction in the coming days or weeks?
There are 9 states right now that have varying levels of eviction protections beyond what the CDC moratorium guaranteed. We heard from the White House today they're estimating that about 30% of renters are still protected. So in New Jersey, for instance, nobody can be evicted until January 2022. New Mexico has an indefinite ban on evictions from the state Supreme Court. California, Minnesota, and Washington State have eviction protections in place until October. Illinois and New York have paused evictions until September. And then 2 other states, Hawaii and Maryland, have eviction protections that expire in just a few weeks in mid-August. We should also note there's a few states where there may not be a blanket eviction ban, but where there are laws that say renters who have applied for rental aid are protected from being evicted while that aid is being decided on. So Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, and Oregon have laws in place that are that do protect renters as long as they have, started that process of looking for aid.
Well, we heard Congresswoman Bush calling for the House to return from their summer recess. Is that likely? And in terms of legislation, what can you tell us about the bill from Congresswoman Maxine Waters?
So Congresswoman Waters' bill extends the CDC's protections until the end of December, and progressive Democrats, we saw, are urging their party to vote on that extension. It does seem like a tall order, though, since there was a bill late Friday that was voted on to extend the eviction moratorium just to mid-October, and that vote in the House failed. That bill did not succeed. Republicans do object to extending the moratorium, but as my colleague Sarah Weiss has reported, Democrats themselves are split on whether to extend eviction protections and how long of an extension to push for. We've also heard frustrations from some Democrats that it's gotten to this point that they say, it was so late in the process that just a couple days before the moratorium was set to expire that the White House has said, it wasn't able to extend it. Of course, the White House itself has said it's examining what other legal powers it has, whether it can extend any more narrow eviction protections. Today, the White House called on city and state authorities to put in place local eviction protections for at least 2 months. It's also asking federal agencies to extend eviction protections for federally backed housing.
Well, Irina, this was always meant to be a temporary relief measure. What data went into the decision to end the relief benefit now?
So when the White House said last week that it would like to extend the eviction protections, but that it couldn't, it pointed to the Supreme Court ruling from June, in which Justice Brett Kavanaugh basically said that any extension of the eviction protections would require congressional action. Of course, housing advocates dispute that. They say they believe the administration does have the authority to act. They point out that since the CDC first put in the halt on evictions, which was now a year ago, there's been a lot more research that evictions do contribute to the spread of COVID-19. There was a study published last month that showed that states that allowed evictions to proceed through allowing those evictions were responsible for an additional 433,000 cases and 10,000 additional deaths from COVID. Of course, that's before the Delta variant was widespread, which we know is much, much more infectious. We also have research from the eviction lab at Princeton University that indicates the neighborhoods where evictions are most common, where we see the highest rates of eviction filings, also tend to have the lowest rates of vaccination. So housing advocates say, whatever health justifications we had when we first put the moratorium in place, they say those justifications are so much stronger now.
Right. The data really is sobering when you look at these areas. Irina Ivanova, thank you so much, Irina.
Thank you, Elaine.